So people burn out because of a lack of confidence, because of a lack of capacity, because of a lack of competency. If you think about those three things, I lack confidence because I don't have clarity around how I'm going to implement XYZ successfully.
This is the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, where we equip and empower leaders like you to thrive in and create harmony between your professional and personal lives. I'm your host, Bethany Rees, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking with Casey Watts about why clarity is the leader's most underrated superpower and how clarity precedes capacity. Casey Watts is the team leadership expert and the founder of Casey Watts Coaching and Consulting, LLC. With over 20 years of experience as a classroom teacher, instructional coach, and district leader, she's seen how a lack of clarity, not effort, is what keeps teams stuck. Drawing from her time in schools and her own leadership journey, Casey created the Clarity Cycle framework to help leaders build capacity, improve retention, and create dream teams on purpose. She now speaks, coaches, and consults nationally, equipping leaders from various industries. Casey also hosts the Catching Up with Casey podcast, where she explores practical strategies for leading with clarity and intention. Welcome to the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, Casey. I am so happy to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about this thing called clarity that we hear so often, but I think gets misunderstood and definitely underutilized.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, you have a new book out. It's called The Craft of Clarity: 6 Steps to Bridge Gaps, Foster Commitment, and Create Sustainable Alignment. And I'm excited to talk about this book to help our listeners really tap into the underrated superpower, which is, of course, is clarity. And Casey, you're the clarity queen. So I cannot wait for you to help us understand what it is and why it's so important that we tap into that superpower.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I did recently publish a book. I say recently, at some point I'm going to have to stop saying recently, but in January it was published. I'm really excited about it. And one thing that I think is really important to know about this book, so if you're listening and you can't see it, there is an image here that has all of these light bulbs that are not lit. They're all black light bulbs, and above them, the wires are just super tangled. And I like to think about it. I don't know about you, but Christmas lights can get the best of me. And so I just start tugging at everything instead of being really slow and methodical and taking one little wire at a time and unraveling it. I just get so frustrated with it that I either hand it off to someone else or I just put it back in the box and I go buy a new set of lights that are nicely bound. But what's interesting, if you notice, that's exactly how these light bulbs are that are black, that are unlit, until you start to tease that out and you finally get them unraveled, the light bulbs come on. And it just creates a beautiful backdrop. I think about Christmas time. Over time, we've taken these light bulbs or these Christmas lights, and they've transitioned to be a part of our daily lives. Like we see them outside on decks, or we have people putting them up in their classrooms. So they've become a staple in lighting up our lives. And that's my hope for the Craft of Clarity, is that it just serves as a tool to help unravel the mess and the chaos of all of the wires and bring light and clarity to a situation.
Oh, that's such a good visual. I am such a visual learner, and that really does explain it, because I am the Clark Griswold of Christmas and Christmas decorations and lights. I truly am. And I think that's just such a great visual to say, let's unravel all of the stuff, all the mess, so that those lights can come on and we can see clearly. So as we dive into clarity, can you just tell us, what do you mean by clarity, so that we have a working definition of what we're talking about?
Okay, so you were probably so familiar. I know your listeners are probably so familiar with Brené Brown's phrase, clear is kind, right? We hear it all the time. I use it quite frequently. A lot of the times what leaders think about when they hear that phrase is, we need to communicate verbally, and sometimes we need to have hard conversations. And that is true. Sometimes you will have to have hard conversations, but the phrase clear is kind is so much deeper than that. And that's what I want to talk about with the definition, or a working definition for clarity, because what we want to do is go beyond just verbal communication and put clarity to action. I like to read a couple of definitions from Merriam-Webster's dictionary about clarity. The first one is the quality of being easily understood, or the quality of being clear, right? That we think about verbal communication there. We do want to be clear. The next one is what we're going to lean into. But this first one, the quality of being easily understood, think about how many times leaders of teams have said, I have been clear. I have stated the expectation. We have talked about this time and time again, and still people are not getting on board or people are not committing. We hear it all the time. We see it all the time. And here's what's so interesting. When I'm working with teams and leaders, oftentimes I kind of function in that what I call the intermundium. So I'm in the in-between space, and I get to hear the perspectives of the leaders and the teams that they're leading. So leaders are saying all of those things about, I'm being clear, nobody's getting on board, they won't do what we've asked. And then I'm hearing the teams say the opposite. They're saying, we have no idea what's going on. Because here's what's happening. We're stating that verbally. We're using that phrase clear as kind, but we're stopping there. We're not putting action to it. Second definition, the state of having a full, detailed, and orderly mental grasp of something.
Ooh, that's good.
It's so good.
That
And
is
it's
so
so much more powerful and detailed than the quality of being easily understood. And so that's really when we think about that second definition, that's what my book is all about. And that's what the Clarity Cycle framework is about, is bringing systems to creating clarity so that it is a full, detailed, and orderly mental grasp of something, not just for the leader, but for the people that they are leading.
First of all, thank you for that definition, that mental grasp. Those are the words that I'm clinging on to because it has that deeper understanding of, I don't just get it, I truly understand it and can apply it. So I've heard it, understand it, can apply it, and apply meaning to it. But I want to tap into something that you said in your examples of whenever you're operating in that in between with leaders saying, but I'm saying it clear as kind, the word, what popped in my head, I can't help, I love movie quotes. This is from Rush Hour, where Jackie Chan's talking. He's, don't you understand the words coming out of my mouth? And then Chris Tucker says, man, ain't nobody understand the words coming out of your mouth. I feel like that's the dynamic we have as leaders are saying, but I'm saying it. Don't you understand what I'm saying? And then their employees are like, man, ain't nobody understand the words coming out of your mouth. Give my terrible reenactment of that scene. But as you're talking, I'm like, that's what happens from the smallest of organizations, a team of two, a marriage even, all the way to your Fortune 500, Fortune 50, big Amazon, Google companies. A lack of clarity and connection to clarity is running rampant in our organizations. Leaders know the verbiage, clear as kind. But honestly, you say that leaders are groomed and not developed, and there's a lack of leadership development so that we even have the skill set of understanding what clarity is and then how to apply it. So can you dive into that? How do we even start with leaders understanding that definition, which is so good, to then applying it?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. I want to talk about two things, actually. Let's talk about being groomed for a position because of the person that you are, versus being groomed in the right way to be a leader. So I do talk about this a little bit in the book. One of the things that happens, especially I see this really prevalently in education, and I'm sure it exists in other organizations too, specifically nonprofit, but also probably for-profit organizations as well. But I'm going to give the example of schools. We have teachers who thrive as classroom teachers, right? They thrive as maybe even being collaborative with their teams. So then as a master teacher, they get pulled out of the classroom to move into that next positional role, which would likely be instructional coach or assistant principal. And then again, move into like principal, superintendency, whatever the case might be. But just because you are a master in one position does not mean you inherently have the skills for another position, specifically leadership. A master classroom teacher is a master at her craft and is a master at working with students. But when you move into a leadership role, you are working with adults who are very set in their ways, and they have all of these previous experiences that they're bringing to the table that you have to know how to handle and manage. And we're not being taught, like, for sure, most people who are going into a leadership position, they are not explicitly being taught, very specific leadership habits and skills that need to be built over time. And because of that, the leadership turnover rate is really high. We don't really get clear on social awareness. We don't get clear on goal clarity. Like, we're not sure how to manage complex people that we work with. So
Oh,
that's
man.
really the idea there is we're seeking those positions. People want to climb the ladder, but the problem is we're climbing the ladder without all of the tools to be able to function well on that next rung. So I talk a lot about taking that ladder and laying it down. And let's think about, yes, you might want to reach this position. It might be one of your goals that you have to go into a leadership position. But if we are not growing at each rung of the ladder in different ways, then it's going to be really difficult for us to reach that rung, or it's going to be really difficult for us to thrive in that rung. Take the ladder down, because really we can move in any direction. It doesn't always have to be we're moving up the ladder. Instead, I'm growing in this position and I'm going to move here. I'm going to grow in this position. I might go backwards on the ladder and still I'm growing at each rung of the ladder. So those are just some thoughts. I'd love to hear what your ideas are that are popping into your mind.
Good Lord. Number one, I love the visual of the ladder laying it down. As you were talking about that, that happens in every single industry. I'm going to use like an engineer, really good technician, really good at numbers. But then because they're good at engineering, then they're over engineers. But then maybe they haven't been developing those leadership skill sets because leaders lead people. They don't necessarily do the tasks anymore. Yes, leaders still do some tasks, but they're mainly leading people who now do the tasks. A whole different skill set there. And you're hitting the nail on the head of we so often seek a position, but we forget about the skill set that we need, and they're not the same. We've got to focus on that. I love your visual. And also, if you think about the ladder, there's multiple ladders against different walls. And so
Yeah.
sometimes you're taking what could be considered a level position. You're going from one team to another, and you're on a different ladder and on a different wall. And so there's skill sets that need to be there. So always grow where planted. And I love that you're bringing this conversation to the table. And to be honest, I feel like I lived this out, which is what prompted me to write my book, Leadership on the Rocks. I went from individual contributor to leader of people, and it was a whole different ballgame. And I struggled. I struggled greatly, which is what led me to now talking on this podcast. All these things is we're not developing our leaders enough. And so, sister, I'm glad you're on board with helping us with this. It's so needed. I'm a product of it. Where were you decades ago when I needed you?
I was living through it and learning all the things that I now know not what to do.
So true. Now that we know that we've got to do a better job of developing leaders. Let's jump back into clarity. And specifically, how do we coach leaders? Talk about that clarity cycle framework. How do we develop that skill set to be more clear?
Yeah. When I'm working with organizations, there are three ways that I work with them. It will always fall into clarity. Like, how are we gaining and creating clarity? But the three ways that we work through that is either I'm working with them to develop reflective leaders. Reflective leaders have goal clarity, social clarity, and emotional clarity.
And
Goal clarity, social clarity, and emotional clarity.
that's good.
So you really think it like when I think about those things, we hear a lot of the time self and social awareness, but we really have to be able to self-manage with all of those things. And that's why clarity around goals, social clarity, and emotional clarity are so important, because it informs how we interact with the people that we're leading. So that's one way that I work with leaders and gain clarity. Another way we gain and create clarity is thinking about collaboration in our organization. A lot of the times I see that we mostly are functioning in faux collaboration, which is to say fake collaboration. And we want to move into authentic collaboration. So I help leaders think about how are we going to develop norms, protocols, and models so that our meetings matter and we are authentically collaborating and moving forward as an organization. But the third way that I work with leaders is really thinking about directional clarity. In other words, how are we going to get our people committed to our vision and goals? And that's where the clarity cycle framework comes in. When I teach about this clarity cycle framework, I take leaders through 6 steps that are going to help their people understand what the area of focus and goals are and get committed to that. We dive into what is your area of focus that's under the broader vision and mission of the organization. From that area of focus, which really is a problem that you're trying to address, what are goals that are going to help you to solve that problem? We analyze those goals, and then the third step is we're going to build the habit of gaining insight from our people so they can take ownership. And guess what? We talked about earlier, they might hear you say, here's our area of focus and goals, but they still don't know what's going on. So we've got to gain insight from them. The insight that we gain from them allows us to then start to cast vision and script critical moves. We can leverage what they're already doing well and understand and have the capacity to do, and then script these tiny steps to help us to reach those goals in that broader area of focus. And then the last two steps are really crucial, and we miss them too often. The fifth step is providing feedback regularly and celebrating systematically. We miss it all the time. We might think we're providing feedback, and we may be providing feedback, but if it's not tied to your area of focus and goals, then your feedback is moot. There's no point in providing feedback if it's not helping us to reach our targets. And then celebrating systematically, we often hear organizations who are celebrating for the pure sake of celebrating because they want to boost morale. But if you're trying to boost morale with these surface level celebrations, then all you're doing, you may be improving the climate of your organization, but you're not really improving the culture of it. And we want to create a culture of commitment, clarity, and capacity. And then finally, the last step, the sixth step, is how are we going to calibrate and sustain progress? Meaning, how do we make sure this is not just a poster on the wall that looks pretty that people forget about as they pass by it? So those are the 6 steps of the Clarity Cycle framework. And I tell leaders when they're going through this, yes, it is 6 different steps, but we want to see it as each step as a habit that you are building that's going to help you gain clarity and create clarity for your people.
That's so good. You've got to read the book because we've got to dive deeper into that. We don't have time on this podcast in this episode, but just hearing those steps, I immediately thought about multiple situations where there's an initiative, a goal, a vision, something that I needed to accomplish, whether it was within the big organization in which I served or in my own company. And I can just see how all of those steps are, I'm like looking through the glass, trying to adjust the focus so that I can get where I need to go, and then strategize, and then synchronize moves, and then provide feedback so that the strokes are easier to get where I need to go. All of the things. And I think that's the best summary of it is you're hitting the nail on the head with all of the things that we need to get where we want to go. And you're summarizing it through the framework of clarity.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Man, whenever there isn't clarity, let's really pinpoint the problem here so people feel it. Because so often, whenever I read a leadership book, whenever I listen to a leadership podcast, I can be like shaking my head like, yeah, that's important. Yeah, that's important. But then to jump from hearing something, knowing something to actually applying it, doing it in my day-to-day life, I got to have a real problem for me to develop the energy to go apply, right? So can you pinpoint a problem? Here's a problem you probably feel and why you need to care about clarity so that you start applying some of these 6 steps.
Yeah, there are so many things that I think about, but the thing that comes to mind most is what we hear so often, and I see it on social media all the time, is we hear the phrase burnout. And we also notice that we have retention problems, and people get burned out because of it could be several different things, but I want to talk about why clarity matters so much here and what happens when we don't provide clarity. So people burn out because of a lack of confidence, because of a lack of capacity, because of a lack of competency. If you think about those 3 things, I lack confidence because I don't have clarity around how I'm going to implement XYZ successfully. And I haven't been provided feedback to help me to do that. So there we go with the feedback and why it's so important for it to be really targeted. That feedback provides clarity and it allows people to collectively move toward a target or goal. So now, if I'm being provided feedback that's going to build my confidence in helping our organization move forward, then we are reaching what is called collective efficacy, which means we have the belief as a whole that we, as a group, can reach a goal or target, or we can make a difference or impact.
Mm-hmm.
So I think about that. Like the lack of confidence is rampant in so many different organizations. I think about schools significantly, but in other organizations as well, which leads to the next thing. If in order for people to build their confidence, they have to feel competent. Think about the number of times for me, especially for my personality, if I don't feel competent in something, it does a number on me. I stop contributing because I'm not sure if what I'm contributing is valuable. I want start looking for something else to do that maybe I'm good at. I start to think, like, question all of the things that I'm bringing to the table. Is this good enough? If we are not competent, it affects our confidence. If we don't have clarity around how to build that competence or what it's all for, then chances are I'm not going to be able to build competencies.
Yeah. Capacity precedes
Yes.
capacity.
Okay. So we have to have confidence. We have to build competency in order for the capacity of our people to improve. That's where people are not going to feel burned out and they're not going to leave your organization because they have the capacity to contribute. That's a lot of words with the letter C.
I love
Yeah,
alliteration.
yeah. But we see it so often. If people are coming to work, number one, if they are dreading going to work, chances
Mhm.
are there's a lack of clarity and they can't buy into something that's bigger than themselves because there's nothing there that's bigger than themselves. And if there is something there that's bigger than themselves, it's too big to approach because they don't have the clear steps to reach
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
So those are some things I think we see a lot in organizations that are pretty visible.
It's so true. And clarity isn't just for the leader, it's a gift to the team. And I say that, and it's a tongue-in-cheek caveat off of Brene Brown's to be clear is to be kind. Man, we do not, and I'm going to say a blanket statement. We don't look at things from a stakeholder customer point of view enough. We sit in a meeting, gather information, hear about an initiative, and we see it as a checklist. My job is to now tell other people about this initiative, check the box, done. I said it. They should
Hmm.
get it, they should know how to do it. And so often we don't put ourselves in their shoes of, what is their background knowledge about this? How is it tied to the bigger mission? What is a strategy for implementation? How can we streamline it to make it easy? What insights do they bring? Because top down, often they're the bottleneck. They don't provide the clarity, they provide the vision, but how that vision gets implemented really comes bottom up. That's where transformation happens,
Yep.
individual contributor up. And so often, I think if we just take a split second as leaders to pause and say, I'm holding this message, this initiative, this mandate. What does it look like from the seat across the desk or across the
Hmm.
aisle or across the whatever it is in your industry? Take a hot second to stop and think. That will help you gain a different perspective. Clarity can come when you have clear perspective. Clarity. I'm a glasses wearer. I need glasses to see. Without my
Hmm.
glasses, I can't even drive because I can't see in front of me. I
Yeah.
need glasses. And so often, if we just look at the people on our teams of everybody has a different prescription lens that they need, how can I provide that for them? That's going to elevate. That's your superpower as a leader. How can I give
Yeah.
people what they need to see clearly so that they can be successful at their job?
Yes.
You're
Absolutely.
everything you're saying. I just want to be like, listen to this episode again, people. Listen to it again. It's so important.
Yeah.
Can we dive into for just a split second? Go back to feedback. You've mentioned it a couple of times, which tells me it's really important. Feedback is not good job.
Yeah.
Feedback is not the once a year evaluation. I've checked some boxes. Congratulations, you're proficient. Let's move on. Like that just
Hmm.
really honestly ticks me off if that's the only feedback people are getting. So, talk to us about how we can be better at feedback for clarity to build that confidence, competency, and capacity.
Yeah. From my experience, if we are approaching feedback as either blanketed or we're approaching it as I don't have this bigger target that we're trying to reach, so I'm just going to leave them a good job. Love what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. We're not growing our people. We are not, what we're doing there is we are being diminishers. I love the work of Liz Wiseman. She wrote the book Multipliers and the Multiplier Effect, and she talks about multipliers versus diminishers. When we're leaving that very vague, brief statement for feedback, what we're doing is diminishing some of our most talented people. And think about this too. We often provide feedback to the people that we feel like need it most. And that ends up being the people who are struggling.
Yeah.
That's not what we need to be doing. Robin Jackson talks about a quadrant where if we look at the high will, high skill people, what they desperately want is feedback because they're the people that want to continuously grow. And if they're not provided that, then they become stagnant and they have the potential to move into a different quadrant where they're not motivated to participate or engage in their efforts. So our high will, high skill people definitely need feedback, probably more so than our people who are struggling. And if we're not providing feedback that's related to a target or goal, then we are also diminishing what our organization has the potential to do. I just imagine a school of fish moving together, right? We want our organization to be a school of fish moving together, but that means that our feedback has to be tied to what we're trying to create clarity around. If we're not doing that, we're going to fall back into that. I've told them what the expectation is, but no one's getting on board, or I'm not seeing this happening. It's because your feedback isn't intentional and we haven't created a system for feedback. You have to have systems in place. No matter what organization you're in, if you are not scheduling a reminder for yourself to provide feedback and considering what does feedback look like, what deserves our feedback, and how are we going to see that our feedback has made a difference, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
I love it. And just to add even to that, number one, you mentioned specific feedback, right? We know it needs to be specific and timely. But another thing is a lot of people get freaked out but if I give feedback, it's very subjective and it's like, hey, great job on the presentation. People stayed engaged. I'm judging, evaluating. Don't miss the mark of, you can also provide feedback just asking a reflective question. And I heard you mention the reflective thinking piece of that is, I really enjoyed your presentation. Tell me what you feel good about in it.
Yeah.
Boom. They're getting feedback through their own reflective practices and that conversation. I mean,
yeah, I want to add on to that because if you can ask that question for sure, what a great question to ask. If you're implementing the Clarity Cycle framework and you know that your organization is working toward an area of focus and goals, that question can sound like, tell me about or think about how what you've done today contributes to where we're going as an organization. Because you want that area of focus and those goals to stay top of mind. And you want them to see that what they're doing is contributing to that.
Oh man, that is so true. I love that. That is like such higher level thinking of, man, I am really helping build that vision and getting us there, and I am important. And that is
Yes.
just massive. Whenever you start building that kind of culture within your teams through that type of feedback, conversation, reflective question. Next level, y'all. All right. So, Casey, as we wrap up the clarity, taking it from just this assumption of, I told them they should know, to actual clarity based leadership where we're building the confidence, the competency, the capacity through clarity. What are some key takeaways for our listeners that they need to apply to grow in their own leadership?
First and foremost, I want to say absolutely read the book and know that when you read the book, if you are part of a school-based organization, it is going to resonate with you because it's who it was written for. However, if you're part of another organization, not within the education space, my challenge is to read the first 3 chapters and then to look at that clarity cycle framework and see how does this apply to my organization. And I would encourage you to. talk a lot on my own podcast about how we can bring clarity to different leadership habits. So, really diving into my podcast and looking at episodes, I talk about the 6 steps of the clarity cycle framework and bring clarity to those things. So, that would be first and foremost, what are the skills that you are developing to gain clarity for yourself and create clarity for other people? So, that's number one. Number two, I love what you mentioned earlier about perspective. One of the things that I talk about when I'm leading teams is to let go of assumptions. We have to let go of the assumption that people are on the same page or know what we mean. We have to have a common language with our people, and it doesn't inherently exist unless we do that purposeful work. And then the third thing is probably the most important, and that is really identify who you are as a leader. Before you start trying to do all of this work, become a reflective leader who has emotional clarity. Who are you as a person? What made you the way that you are? How do you approach other people? How do you understand who they are so you can engage effectively? And then have goal clarity, not only for yourself, but for your organization.
And so good. Recap, because I love the way you put it. One, read the book. Just read the book. And I want to tap into that for 1 second. So, you and I come from the same background, education. I can't even tell you how many business books I read and how much it helped me as an educational leader. And now, what we're saying is read an educational leadership book, and it's going to help you be a better business leader as well.
Yep.
Because the leadership principles are so universal. It doesn't matter the industry. And yes, read the book. I don't care what industry you're in, healthcare, business, it doesn't matter. As you were talking about just the goal clarity and being goal focused, but also the social and emotional, what I thought of is don't be the blind leading the blind. Recognize that you're blind and
Yep.
then learn how to see. That's literally
Yes.
what I was thinking as you were saying all that. You have to develop yourself as a leader. You recognize we are all blind. We have blind spots in some capacity. And there's some blind spots that I struggle in. And now it's my job as a leader to bring other people along who have that clarity in that blind spot that I have so that they add value to the team in that regard. But now let's flip to the opposite. What is one poor decision you would warn our leaders to avoid? Like, leaders, don't do this one thing. You're better than that. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I what I would say is don't let me see how to phrase this appropriately. Don't don't assume that your people know. Don't
Mm,
make the assumption that people know or that they should know. That's going to be it. That's going to be
yeah.
it, Bethany, because I think we make assumptions so often and we have to let go of that. So that's what I'm going to leave you guys with is don't make an assumption. Always pause and consider, am I making an assumption about this? What
Mhm.
could be the assumptions that I'm making and what could actually be true?
Oh, that's so good. And y'all know the phrase, I won't finish it, but whenever you assume, you make a whoop out of you and me every time.
Mhm.
All right, Casey, where can our listeners go to learn more about you and your work, and where can they go get the book?
Yes, I am at my website is catchingupwithcasey.com. I'm going to say go to the speaking page because my 10x goal is to share this message about clarity with as many people as possible so they know how to gain clarity and create clarity for other people and build capacity. So after you look at that, you can go to Amazon. My book is on Amazon, Craft of Clarity. It should pop up. I would love for you to read it and then leave a review.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Casey. You're just so wonderful. And guys, it doesn't matter the industry you're in, you need clarity in it. So, Casey is the clarity queen. And I just implore you to go learn more about her and bring her into whatever it is that you're looking at. So, thank you for
Awesome.
being here and sharing your wisdom on the show.
Yes, thank you, Bethany. This has been a fantastic conversation.
All right, guys, until next time, continue putting in the work of building your life and leadership on the rocks, the essential rocks. God bless. Remember, the most essential rock you can build your life and leadership on is the rock of Jesus Christ. Today's Bible verse comes from Psalm chapter 119, verse 130. The unfolding of your words gives light. It imparts understanding to the simple.